just over a month ago, an explosion ripped through the Imperial Sugar plant outside of Savannah, Georgia, killing 12 workers and critically injuring 11 others. The probable cause of this explosion was combustible sugar dust. The loss of lives in workplace incidents is always a tragedy, but what's particularly troubling about the Imperial Sugar explosion is that not only was it preventable, but the U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration had been specifically warned about the dust hazards and provided a guidance on how to address them. The U.S. Chemical Safety Board warned OSHA over a year ago that existing standards were inadequate to guard against the risk of industrial dust like sugar building up in dangerous levels and exploding. As we will hear today, in 2006, the Chemical Safety Board issued a comprehensive study that identified hundreds of combustible dust incidents that had killed over 100 workers during the previous 25 years. The Chemical Safety Board report found that no comprehensive federal rules exist for to control the risk of dust explosions in general industry, and recommended that OSHA issue such rules. Tragically, well more than a year after the Chemical Safety Board's report was issued, OSHA has taken no action to issue combustible dust rules. In today's hearing, we will discuss legislation H.R. 5522 to require OSHA to issue a standard to protect workers against combustible dust explosions. The new standard would be based on a well-recognized, highly effective voluntary standards issued by the National Fire Protection Association. Sadly, OSHA's failure to act on combustible dust is not the first time the agency's inaction may have cost workers their lives. For example, in December 19th in 2007, 4 workers died in a massive explosion at the T2 Chemicals plant in Jacksonville, Florida, that the likely cause was runaway chemical reaction. The Chemical Safety Board had warned OSHA about this chemical reaction hazard in 2002 report that identified 108 fatalities in the previous 20 years resulting from explosions caused by chemical reactions. The Chemical Safety Board report made recommendations for addressing reactive hazards, but as with the dust hazard, OSHA chose not to follow up on the recommendations. Instead, OSHA chose to rely on the compliance assistance and voluntary programs such as industry alliances, web pages, fact sheets, speeches, and booths at industry conferences. The Chemical Safety Board judged these voluntary activities to be unacceptable. The bottom line is that under the Bush administration, OSHA has utterly failed to fulfill its congressional mandate. The agency is leaving the Congress with no choice but to step in. Just look at the record of the last 12 months. On March 22nd, 2007, this committee held a hearing on a British Petroleum Texas City refinery explosion that killed 15 workers. In the decade before our hearing, OSHA had not conducted a single comprehensive inspection of any refinery in the United States. 2 days before the hearing, OSHA announced it would step up inspections in refineries nationwide. On April 24, 2007, the Subcommittee on Workforce Protections held a hearing on OSHA's failure to address the death and illnesses of workers in the food flavoring industry, deaths caused by the horrific, irreversible lung disease now called popcorn lung. Hours after the hearing, OSHA announced a so-called National Emphasis Program targeting food and flavoring manufacturers. On September 26, 2007, the House approved a bill forcing OSHA to develop rules to protect food flavoring workers. Just hours before that vote, OSHA announced it was going to start the rulemaking process. The day after the Imperial Sugar explosion, Congresswoman Lynn Woolsey and I sent a letter to Secretary Chow requesting the standards on combustible dust. On the morning of March 3rd, after receiving no response from Secretary Chow, Congressman Barrow and I introduced the H.R. 5522. Coincidentally, the same morning as we made the announcement, Assistant Secretary Falk was in Savannah conducting a series of press interviews, and he announced that OSHA would conduct more combustible dust inspections and send letters to companies at risk. But there is no reason for OSHA to wait to get to work on issuing new rules that would prevent this kind of disaster in the future. The National Fire Protection Association and others have known for a long time what causes these explosions, and the National Fire Protection Association's voluntary standards are feasible and affordable. Unfortunately, we see this tragic pattern of workplace injury or death followed by OSHA inaction everywhere we look. We see it in the agency's failure to inspect refineries, in its failure to issue new workplace safety rules, in its failure to address ergonomic hazards, in its failure to effectively address some potential hazards of pandemic flu, and its failure to even to meet even its own deadlines on standards for workers' personal protection equipment and other life-threatening hazards. It is this highly questionable injury and illness statistics and its promotion of voluntary programs over strong law enforcement that troubles us. Let me be clear. The Congress will continue to step in until OSHA starts to consistently and aggressively fulfilling its responsibility of protecting the lives of American workers.